Your parents didn't hug you much. They didn't say, "I love you" before bed. They didn't ask how you were feeling or validate your emotions. And when you cried, they told you to stop. When you were scared, they told you to toughen up. When you needed comfort, they told you life isn't fair. And now, as an adult, you wonder, did they even love me? Or was I just another mouth to feed? This is the psychology of parents in the 1970s. And before you judge them, you need to understand what shaped them. Let me explain. Here's the first thing you need to know. Your parents weren't taught how to parent. They were taught how to survive. The generation that raised children in the 1970s grew up in the shadow of war. Their parents lived through the Great Depression, through World War II, through poverty, hunger, and death on a scale we can barely imagine. Survival wasn't about feelings. It was about food on the table, a roof overhead, not dying. Emotions were a luxury, and luxuries were for people who could afford them. So when your parents were children, they learned one lesson above all. Don't be weak. Don't complain. Don't need too much. Because need was dangerous. Need meant you might not get it. And not getting what you needed could mean not surviving at all. This became their operating system. Here's what that looked like in practice. When your father fell and cried, his father said, "Boys don't cry." When your mother felt scared, her mother said, "Don't be dramatic." When either of them needed comfort, they learned to find it alone. Or not at all. They weren't taught that emotions were information. They were taught that emotions were weakness. And weakness could get you hurt. So they buried it. They pushed it down. They built walls around their hearts. And those walls, they never came down. Not even for their own children. Here's where it gets complicated. Your parents likely did love you. Deeply. But they had no language for it. No framework for expressing it. The only parenting model they had was the one they received. And that model said love was shown through actions, not words. Through providing, not hugging. Through discipline, not tenderness. Your father working 60 hours a week. That was love. Your mother making sure you had clean clothes and food on the table. That was love. Your parents not letting you quit when things got hard. That was love. They just never said it. Because no one ever said it to them. Here's what psychology was like in the 1970s. It was the dark ages for emotional intelligence. The dominant belief was that children were resilient, that they didn't really understand or remember trauma, that being too affectionate would spoil them, that too much attention would make them weak. Parenting advice in the 1970s actually said, "Don't pick up a crying baby too quickly, you'll create dependency. Don't praise children too much, you'll inflate their ego. Let them figure it out on their own, that's how they learn." This wasn't cruelty. This was science, or what passed for science at the time. Your parents were following the rules they were given, rules that we now know were deeply flawed. Here's another layer. Mental health was not discussed. Depression wasn't talked about, it was the blues. Anxiety wasn't recognized, it was being nervous. Trauma wasn't processed, it was buried and moved past. If your parents struggled, they suffered alone. In silence. With no support, no therapy, no language for what they were experiencing. And they were expected to just keep going. Keep providing. Keep functioning. No matter what was happening inside. Many of them were drowning. And no one noticed. Because no one was supposed to notice. Here's what this created. A generation of parents who were emotionally unavailable. Not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to be available. Their own emotions were locked away. How could they possibly help you with yours? They couldn't give what they never received. They couldn't model what was never modeled for them. They couldn't validate feelings they were taught to suppress. So they did the only thing they knew. They provided. They protected. They pushed you to be strong. Because in their world, strength was survival. And survival was the highest form of love. Here's something most people don't realize. Many parents in the 1970s were dealing with undiagnosed PTSD. From war, from childhood abuse, from poverty and loss. They carried invisible wounds that affected everything. Their temper, their distance, their inability to connect. They weren't choosing to be cold. They were protecting themselves from pain they couldn't name. And sometimes, that protection looked like neglect. Here's the generational pattern. Their parents survived the depression and war. They raised children with one message: be tough, life is hard. Those children became your parents. They softened a little, but not much. They provided more, but emotions were still off limits. Then came you. And you're the first generation to ask, why didn't they show love differently? You're breaking a cycle they didn't even know existed. Here's what this means for you. If you grew up feeling unloved, unseen, or emotionally neglected, your pain is valid. Those wounds are real, and you have every right to heal from them. But here's the other truth. Your parents were likely doing the best they could with what they had, which wasn't much. They weren't equipped. They weren't taught. They were surviving their own pain while raising you. That doesn't erase your experience, but it might reframe it. They weren't withholding love to hurt you. They were withholding it because they never learned how to give it. Here's the hardest part. You might never get the apology you deserve. You might never hear them say, I should have done better. Because admitting that would mean confronting everything they buried. And for many of them, that's too terrifying. The walls they built saved them. Taking them down might destroy them. So they stay defensive, or dismissive, or silent. Not because they don't love you, but because they can't face what acknowledging the truth would mean. Here's where you come in. You are the cycle breaker. You're learning emotional language they never had. You're going to therapy they never went to. You're asking questions they never thought to ask. You're becoming the parent, the partner, the person they couldn't be. Not because you're better than them, but because you have tools they didn't have. And that's not their fault. It's just the truth. So if you're struggling to understand your parents, here's what I want you to know. Their coldness wasn't about you. Their distance wasn't rejection. Their silence wasn't proof you didn't matter. It was proof of what they survived and how survival shaped them. You can hold two things at once. Your pain is valid, and they did their best. Both can be true. Before you go, tell me, did your parents show love in actions but never in words? Do you understand them differently now? Drop it in the comments. And if you're breaking the cycle they couldn't break, comment. It ends with me. Let's see how many of us are rewriting the story our parents couldn't change. You're not alone. And what you're doing matters more than they could ever tell you.